Amma ba'd. Is that better? Okay, great. So, the Battle of Ahzab is happening in Medina. It's the Battle of Ahzab. Ahzab means confederations. It means group, a team coming together. In today's life, think of an Ahzab. In today's modern world politics, who do we have as an Ahzab? The NATO is an Ahzab. NATO is a confederation of countries coming together. You attack one, that means you've attacked everybody. That's an Ahzab. Now, there could be a good Ahzab and a bad Ahzab, but this is the Ahzab of Kufr, coming together to fight against Islam that is now fast spreading across the Arabian Peninsula. So, before we get to the Ahzab, try and understand what's going on. We have 13 years of Meccan period and 10 years of Madani period. That is the lifetime of the Rasulullah as a prophet. So, he became a prophet ﷺ at the age of 40. He passed at the age of 63. We have 23 years, 13 years of Makki years, 10 years of Madani. Out of those 13 years, we have very limited information of the Makki period, because in the Meccan period, tortures are going on. Bilal radiallahu anhu is being dragged in the streets. We have very limited written information. We have almost 3 times as much information about the Madani era, the 10 years, compared to the Makki era of 13 years. Because who's going to write down what's going on with all the tortures that are happening? So I quickly want you to understand, who are we fighting? Who are the Muslims fighting at this stage? The 13 years of Meccan period are over, and I'm sure a lot of you know more about the Makki period, because that's what we are taught when we are growing up. So Umar radiallahu converting to Islam, Hamza radiallahu becoming Muslim, all of this stuff is Meccan era. Bilal radiallahu being tortured, the incident of Taif, Isra wal Mi'raj, this is all Mecca. Then it gets to the point where they decide we have to get rid of this man, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so Abu Jahl makes a plan with every single tribe of Makkah, Banu this and Banu that, Banu Umayyah, Banu Makhzum, Banu Asad, Banu everybody. Everybody has to put your sword into the blood, and we're going to kill this leader of Banu Hashim, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And don't tell Abu Lahab, even though Abu Lahab is the uncle of the Rasulullah, and he was the wretched Abu Lahab, but don't tell him, because he's the uncle. And so everybody participated in that, and eventually, you know the famous story when Ali radiallahu was in the bed, when Rasulullah was able to escape from the Hijrah with Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu. So Meccan period is over. As soon as they arrive in Medina, no food, no water. It's a horrible, horrible situation. What is going on in Medina? There's a lot of Banu this and Banu that in Mecca. In Medina, you have 2 main tribes, and you have to remember this for the rest of the sessions that we do. There's Aus and Khazraj. There are 2 main tribes in Medina, that's it. Aus and Khazraj are the mushriks of Medina, not Mecca. And in addition to the mushriks, in Medina you have Jews living in there. Perfectly fine, they're happy, they're wealthy, they're controlling the economy, they have the supermarket in control, they have the production, they are the farmers, and they have all the technology, as we will discuss. And so these Jews, there are 3 tribes. There is Banu Qaynuqa, which we are not going to discuss today. Then there's Banu Nadir, which is going to be very relevant today. And then there's Banu Qurayzah, which is the most relevant in Battle of Ahzab. So Banu Qaynuqa, very quickly, these 3 Jewish tribes will eventually show their true colors, and they will show that they are the enemies of Islam, even though they're pretending to be accepting Rasulullah's Hijrah coming to Medina. Banu Qaynuqa was kicked out in the early stage. After the Battle of Badr, when Muslims had defeated, Abu Jahl is gone, Umayyah ibn Khalaf, all of these high-end elite of the wretched leaders of Makkah are dead in the first year in Medina when the Battle of Badr happened. Right after the Muslims were coming back to Medina, victorious from the Battle of Badr, Banu Qaynuqa is the first one to say, you guys are coming back and thinking you're a big deal. You've just fought these kids, these nobodies, these mushriks, these pagans. If you would have fought us, then we would have showed you what is technology, what is fighting, what is an enemy combatant. And so Banu Qaynuqa openly declared in a way that we don't have anything to do with you. We don't like you guys. We don't like the fact that you are coming to our city. Now, Banu Nadir was perfectly fine with the Rasulullah because he converted Aus and Khazraj of Medina, the mushriks of Medina, into Muslims, right? And Aus and Khazraj had business partnerships with Banu Nadir and with Banu Qurayzah and also with Banu Qaynuqa, but they were kicked out, right? Banu Nadir eventually does not like the Rasulullah. So obviously none of them on the face, they're pretending, but nobody actually wants Islam, right? Because the Yahud were their own people. And so Banu Nadir decided, let's kill him. And how did they do that? They tried to do that is after this Banu Qaynuqa's expulsion, they were invited by the Banu Nadir. The Sahaba and the Prophet was invited by Banu Nadir. Come and let's have dinner and everything. So all the Sahaba arrived at the fortress. Now the Jews had fortresses. Fortresses are huge, these mansions you must have seen in movies in the Roman Empire and Persian Empire. You have these huge doors, fortresses, that you have this pulley to be able to open the door down. This technology lied only with the Jews. The Aus and Khazraj Mushriks did not know anything. They were just Mushrik Arabs. They don't know anything. They're all just praying to pagan gods. So Banu Nadir invited. The Sahaba are all sitting there, and the Rasulullah was sitting there. And all of a sudden, the Prophet gets up, turns around and starts to leave. And the Sahaba look at the Rasulullah, like, what happened? Well, Jibreel just came down and said, get up and leave right now. No questions. The Prophet did not say, why, what happened? He just gets up and leaves. As soon as he leaves, a big, huge boulder, a huge rock, just falls right there where Rasulullah was sitting. So it so happened that Banu Nadir decided, let's call them, as they'll be waiting at the entrance. We'll position the boulder at the perfect place, and as soon as they're waiting for us, just drop it and blame it on anybody in the fortress, right? We have security guards, they made a mistake, whatever, and we'll get rid of this man. And so now we know there's an assassination attempt. So Banu Nadir clearly tried to assassinate what is Muslims president at that time, right? In their mind. What would happen today if you try to assassinate a president of any country? Does death penalty then suffice in those countries that have death penalty? So according to the Jewish law, they were supposed to be put to death because they signed the treaty that they're going to abide by the law of the land. The law of the land was not going to take somebody's life, right? And you try to assassinate what they would think as the president. For us, he's the Rasulullah. But the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, in his mercy, his rahmah, did not put them to death, did not do anything. He just said to them, leave. Because we cannot live together. I mean, if you don't want to be with us, we don't want to be with you. Just leave. You got to pack up and leave, take everything. And so now you can see the Munafiq of Medina, the hypocrites of Medina, not liking this kind of thing. The Banu Qurayzah is already gone. Why do they care about Banu Qurayzah leaving? Why do they care about Banu Nadir leaving? Because they make money. It's business. I have gold market set up because of them. I have a whole riba market set up because of them, And so they don't want Rasulullah asking these people to leave. Who am I going to do business with? And so Banu Nadir is asked to leave. Banu Nadir comes to this leader of the hypocrites, Abdullah ibn Huyay ibn Salul, and he says, this is what your Prophet is asking us to do. So this A'udhu Billah, Astaghfirullah, I have to say some words that are negative because Munafiqs speak without saying Rasulullah because they don't actually believe in the Rasulullah, right? They just pretend to believe in the Rasulullah. And so he says, this man has troubled all of us. Don't worry, I'm going to take care of it. And then he goes to the Rasulullah holds the Rasulullah by his collar to the point where the armor sliced through the beautiful skin of the Rasulullah. And the Prophet says, let go of me. He says, you are not going to expel these guys. Do you know my business relations with these people? You've just come to Madinah a year ago. You don't know anything about these people. And he's talking, you can imagine. I'm just going to end it there. In any case, the Prophet then says, let go of me. And so then he says to Banu Nadir, just pack up and leave. No death penalty, no nothing, just pack up and leave. So they had to pack up. They had like 3 days or 10 days, I cannot remember. What are you going to pack up if you only have 3 days? The most expensive stuff that you carry. The most expensive stuff that they had was doors, fortress doors. Making a door was a technology. It was very expensive to make a door. The Arabs did not have doors in their houses. Aus and Khazraj had nothing. They had curtains. Even the Rasulullah had curtains. And so this door technology came much later when Ammar conquered the Roman Empire and Persian Empire. Then the bathrooms were developed inside as we have here. There were no bathrooms inside the houses at that time. And so they had to take the most expensive stuff. So they loaded their camels up 10 times more than the weight limit. And they put all kinds of gold and doors and everything, and they left. And they went to Khaybar, which was the nearest city for the Jews. So the Jews were in Khaybar, the land of the dates. So now we have Medina, the Jews have left. Banu Qurayzah is gone, Banu Nadir is gone after the assassination attempt. We are left with Banu Qurayzah. That's relevant in Battle of Ahzab. We are now in like the 5th year. So first year, Badr, second year, we have Uhud. Third year, there was a big treachery that happened. I'm going to skip through these things. It's a big betrayal that happened to Muslims. Basically, a tribe just pretended to become Muslim and said, send us teachers and Qur'an and all that, and we want to learn Islam. But actually, it was a plot set up by Abu Sufyaan. Send the Sahaba there and we're going to assassinate them, we're going to kill them. And over 70 Sahaba were killed and bodies piled up, one on top of the other. And some of them were ransomed off and get sent to Mecca. Okay? And these Sahaba, obviously, they were the ones who were shaheed, and they were tortured and then killed. So, when the tragedy of Al-Rajah. This is called the tragedy of Al-Rajah happened. After this, you'll have Ahzab, when the Meccan forces, that is the original Mushriks who hated the Rasulullah, which is why the Prophet did the Hijrah, when they decided we have to get rid of this man, they then decided to have a confederation that is never seen before, which is a partnership of epic proportions. Never before in the history of the Arabs did they ever come together, not more than 2 tribes, maybe 2 or 3 tribes for a temporary reason. But for the first time, you are now going to have a partnership across Arabia of various disparate groups who never cared about each other. They used to rob each other. So Abu Sufyaan gets a proposal from Banu Nadir in Khaybar. And the leader of Banu Nadir was Huyay ibn Abdullah. This is a name you have to remember. He's going to be relevant here. Huyay ibn Abdullah is the father of Safiya radiallahu anha, our mother, the wife of the Rasulullah. She's not the wife yet. Safiya radiallahu anha will be the wife in the Battle of Khaybar, because eventually Muslims will fight in Khaybar. But he is the father of our mother, Binti Huyay. Huyay ibn Abdullah hated the Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam with a passion. He hated him. Safiya radiallahu anha herself, when she was 11, she narrates that when I was 11, I had a habit of jumping in the bed, and as soon as my dad used to enter, he used to first hug me before doing anything else. So I was jumping on the bed this one day, and my father walks in with my uncle, that is Huyay ibn Abdullah's brother. And he did not hug me that day. So I always remembered, why is he not hugging me today? And Huyay ibn Abdullah was talking to his brother, saying, is he the man? Is he the one? Is he the man? This guy? You know, the Rasulullah. And Huyay ibn Abdullah goes, yep, that's him. So the uncle says, so what are you going to do? He says, Huyay ibn Abdullah, the enemy of the Rasulullah, says, Wallahi, I will oppose him until my last breath. Why? Why do the Jews not want to accept Islam and talks about one God, talks about the books, talks about the Akhirah? Why? Can you believe why? Because they were expecting the Prophet to be a Jew. That's it. How is he coming from another mother? He's got to be from our mothers, because God only sends prophets from our lineage, our bloodline. And Allah has replied to that. Allah says that when I sent you a prophet from Ishaq al-Islam's bloodline, what did you try to do? You tried to crucify him, Isa al-Islam, right? So if I would have sent another prophet from that line, you would have said, we can't accept him as a prophet because he's the son of Isa al-Islam, and we don't accept Isa al-Islam. And so I sent the prophet from the other bloodline, from Ismail al-Islam. And now you're saying, no, if he truly is a prophet, he should come from the other line, Ishaq al-Islam. So you have closed your own doors. You don't believe in Ishaq al-Islam's lineage, you don't believe in Ismail al-Islam's lineage, you have closed your own doors. So the Jews became another ummah. So Huyay ibn Abdullah is a sworn enemy of Rasulullah. He goes to Abu Sufyaan and says, how about we do a partnership? We are kicked out from Medina. You guys obviously are losing your business. Why are they losing business? Because the Muslims are blocking the supply routes. The freeways are all blocked. So Edmonton, Calgary goes to, by the way, Edmonton, Calgary, the highway 2, it goes all the way down to Panama. Panama, at the tip of South America, this highway. It starts from Edmonton, goes down to Calgary, to Montana, to Wyoming, and then to Colorado, then to Texas, and then continues Mexico, and then keeps going until Panama. So this highway, if you block it from Calgary, how are they going to have food there in Montana? They can't. And so the highway of Mecca was going to Palestine, which is today's Palestine. At the time it was the Roman Empire, the Christian Roman Empire. And the Muslims are in Medina, because Mecca is here, Medina is here, and Roman Empire is here. So they blocked it. So they can't do business anymore with the Roman Empire, because they have to find newer ways, so it's quite expensive. So Abu Sufyaan decided we have to get rid of them, because of business purposes, and of course the fact that Mushriks, they want us to destroy all the idols. So Huyay ibn Abdullah is there from Khaybar. Abu Sufyaan is there. Abu Sufyaan is surprised. Why is Huyay ibn Abdullah coming with a partnership proposal against Medina? This is your city. I mean, he has been kicked out, but it's your city. And he is one of you people. You see, from Abu Sufyaan's perspective, you guys are all the same. You know, same beard, same halaqah and sharia. Sharia is halaqah. Halaqah is what the Jews call it. It's the same thing. You know, you have the same rules for ghusl and all kinds of wudu and everything. So Abu Sufyaan says, tell me, who is more rightly guided? He's asking Huyay ibn Abdullah, a Jew. Who is more rightly guided? Us, you know, we mushriks, or this Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Who is more rightly guided? Now, what should a Jewish person say? Despite the fact that he doesn't believe in Muhammad Rasulullah, he at least believes in La ilaha illallah and Musab Rasulullah, right? At least he should have said, well, that part is right. If he's true to his Allah, he should have at least said that. He says, you are closer to the truth than they are. Just for political partnership. You see the compromise of the deen for dunya. This is right here. So he has lost his oath even with Allah. You know, if this person especially, he's like the Abu Jahl of the Jews. Just realize, Huyay ibn Akhtab is the worst of the worst. And his mother, our mother, she's the best of the best, right? Sophia, and so Huyay ibn Akhtab does this partnership and he says, I want you to go to another major tribe, which is Ghatafan, the northern side of Saudi Arabia today. These were a collection of bedouins. In fact, they are the ones who are in power today. The Najdi Arabs, all the oil-based economies, Bahrain and Qatar and Kuwait and Oman and all of these, they're all Najdi. These were Bedouins, right? They were nomadic, walking around the desert. How were they making money? How were the Bedouins making money in Mecca at the time? They don't have civilization, they don't have anything, they just have being a spy as a skill, as an art. So I can tell you that Abu Sufyaan's army is coming on this day, I can tell you that truck is coming on that day, and give me money for that. That's what the Bedouins used to do. So they used to know about everything, they know what freeway, who's using what, and they can help you if you pay me the money. So they were mercenaries. Give me the right kind of money and I'll do what you want. No iman is what I'm trying to say, okay? For the right price, we'll do whatever you want. These people from Ghatafan are going to be the enemy number 3 in the Battle of Ahzab. They're all going to come together. So Abu Sufyaan, Banu Nadir, you have Huyay ibn Akhtab, and then you have Ghatafan. Ghatafan is on the north side. So Mecca, Medina, Ghatafan, and then you have the Roman Empire, which is Palestine. And then you have Medina and Khaybar. So you already have these 3. Then you have Banu Qurayzah, which is the last remaining Jewish tribe in Medina, living under the Muslim constitution, happily doing their own halaqah, their own sharia, and they're living side by side with Muslims. The Prophet Muhammad specifically went to Banu Qurayzah and said, listen, you've seen what has happened with Banu Qurayzah, and you've seen what has happened with Banu Nadir. Are you sure you want to stay in our land with this treaty that we have signed? If you don't like it, that's fine, just tell us what is the problem. And Banu Qurayzah gives a halaf, says, Wallahi, we are so happy with you. I mean, why would we not be happy with you, right? We have our own supermarket, we have the control of the economy, we are living our own life. We don't accept you as the Rasulullah, you are so nice with us. Why would we not like you? We are perfectly fine. Take it from us. And we are Jews, we believe in Allah. So I'm saying to you, I swear to Allah, we are happy with you. We're not going to do anything on that. Okay? And they were not lying, they were telling the truth at this time. They actually were happy. They were happy with the Rasulullah and Medina and the Sahaba. Now remember I told you in Medina you have Aus and Khazraj? Aus and Khazraj used to do business with the Jews. The last remaining Jewish tribe, which is the rich tribe, is Banu Qurayzah. So they were doing business with Aus and Khazraj. They don't want to lose that partnership. If they have to leave, they have to lose those business deals. So I need to tell you a little bit about Aus and Khazraj before we move on to these enemy combatants. Aus, the leader of Aus, is probably the greatest Medina Sahabi, Saad ibn Muadh. Remember this name, Saad ibn Muadh. And the leader of Khazraj is Saad ibn Ubadah. So both are Saads. They're called Saadain. So Saad ibn Ubadah and Saad ibn Muadh. Saad ibn Muadh, the leader of Aus, is a higher maqam, higher status than Saad ibn Ubadah, but both of them radiallahu anhu. Saad ibn Muadh is going to be eventually shaheed in the Battle of Ahzab. And how is he going to be done? That's going to be a whole detailed talk. But understand who Saad ibn Muadh. When the Prophet was in Mecca, he sent Musab ibn Umair, another great Sahabi, Musab ibn Umair. Musab ibn Umair was the Bill Gates of Mecca. He was the only child of his son, of his mother, and his father passed away with a lot of money. And he had the best perfumes, he had the best looks. He looked like the Rasulullah, Musab ibn Umair. He looked like the Prophet. And our Prophet was handsome. Besides the fact that he's the greatest human being, he was also good looking, and Musab was good looking. And the women liked him just because he was good looking. And Musab ibn Umair actually became a Muslim because there was a girl that he liked, and that girl became a Muslim. She said, I cannot even be with you unless you accept Islam. And so he became a Muslim for the sake of a girl. And alhamdulillah, what a conversion, because he is one of the greatest Sahabi. And at the Battle of Badr, this is Musab ibn Umair. You must have heard the story by some Sahabi. That Sahabi is Musab ibn Umair. Musab ibn Umair was in the middle of Battle of Badr, the greatest battle. In the middle of the battle, his sword is blunt. It's broken. So he rushes back to the Rasulullah and says, Ya Rasulullah, my sword, it's gone. And so the Prophet Muhammad says, okay, turns back, plucks out a branch of a tree, gives it to Musab ibn Umair and says, take this, Ya Musab, and go and fight. Musab radiallahu anhu takes the branch right there, rushes back to the battlefield, and continues his fight. He did not stop for a second to say, Ya Rasulullah, Rasulullah, this is a branch of a tree. I mean, Badr, Abu Jahl and Ikrim and all of these people. He didn't say, Ya Rasulullah, I said my sword, not the branch. No questions. He didn't even stop to say, he didn't even do this much. We would at least have done this much, astaghfirullah, right? And he is standing there, takes the branch, goes back to the battlefield, and Allah changes it to a sword. That is the Quran for Musab ibn Umair. And he's going to have that until the Akhirah. So Musab ibn Umair, he's the one who went to the battlefield, and then he fought valiantly. And of course, Badr happened what happened. And unfortunately, Musab ibn Umair, then in the next year, in the Battle of Uhud, when Muslims had a lot of casualties, he's going to pass away. Musab ibn Umair is the one who's going to pass away. And a lot of people actually thought Musab ibn Umair is the Rasulullah from the Quraysh side. And the Quraysh started yelling, yes, we got him as if we got Muhammad and so a lot of Sahaba were demoralized that if the Rasulullah has passed away, what are we going to fight for now? But it was not the Prophet, it was Musab. But that is Musab ibn Umair. Why am I talking about him? He is the one who was sent by the Rasulullah to Medina. He said, go and give them da'wah. So Musab ibn Umair has just come from Makkah, and Medina is already listening about these Meccans who are talking about this new religion and everything, and they're causing a lot of chaos in their family. So in Medina there's bad press for Muslims, just like we have today these days. Right? So there's bad press about it already, that you guys are bringing a new religion and all that. He goes to Medina, and Saad ibn Muadh, the leader of Aus, who's responsible for his tribe, is there. And he already has heard enough because he's talking to the leaders in Makkah. And he has heard that there are some troublemakers coming. When he sees Musab ibn Umair talking to everybody, Saad ibn Muadh comes to him and says, listen, this is my spear, and it's poisoned. And it goes straight to your neck if you don't get out. Leave right now. Musab ibn Umair, the great Sahabi himself, he says, why don't you listen to what I'm saying for the next 2 minutes? And if you don't like it, I'll leave, inshallah. Deal? Simple. You just listen to what I'm saying. If you don't like it, I'll leave. He says, okay, go ahead. And he's sitting there with his spear. And those 2 minutes were enough for Saad ibn Muadh to be impressed by Musab ibn Umair, by the religion of Islam, by the Quran, by the recitation, by the rhymes and rhythms, and by the message. Take care of the orphans. Be nice to your parents. The women are not for sale. That's what Islam says, right? And so slaves, black, white, they're all the same. These are the early messages, right? We're not talking right now about hijab and all of that. That's much later. And so he's saying, is this the message that you guys are preaching in Makkah, which is why they hate you guys? He says, yes, that's all we say, but then they hate it. He says, why would somebody hate this message? It's a beautiful message. I believe in this message. Saad ibn Muadh became a Muslim. Now, Saad ibn Muadh, we all know how Ammar radiallahu anhu is, right? In Makkah, the strong Ammar, the sometimes angry Umar, we all know that, right? Saad ibn Muadh is kind of like the equivalent of Medina. Umar radiallahu equivalent. He would get angry, upset, and then he had an anger. But he is the leader of Aus. And Aus and Khazraj, Aus was the superior tribe in the Jahiliyyah. Of course, as a Muslim, everybody is the same. But in the Jahiliyyah time, Aus was fewer in population, but they were superior. And so Saad ibn Muadh says to his tribe, I will not talk to any one of you, I will not come to your homes, I will not eat food or drink water or anything with you if you do not accept the religion that I believe in now, that is Islam. And it just so happens at that time the loyalty was for the tribe, so all of the tribe members, they become Muslim. This is one Saad ibn Muadh who made the entire tribe Muslim. That is Saad ibn Muadh. And it is Saad ibn Muadh, and the reason I'm telling you about him because he's very important in this Battle of Ahzab. This is all part of the Battle of Ahzab, so we are in the Battle of Ahzab right now. And so, Saad ibn Muadh is the one that in the Battle of Badr, if you remember, inshallah we'll do Battle of Badr sometime, the first battle that Muslims fought against Meccans, when the Muslims did not know that this is going to be a battle, because they were just thinking it's just going to be a highway interception and we're going to just stop them and everything, but it turns out it's going to be a full battle. They come in with a full army, horses, cavalry, infantry, everybody. And that's when the Rasul called for a high delegation meeting, all the great Sahabi. You know, you have Umar, you have Abu Bakr, Umar, and you have Miqdad, and you have Saad ibn Muadh, who's from Medina. And that's a popular story. He says, what do you think we should do? Because the army is coming. And so Abu Bakr Siddiq, with his eloquent speech, he says, Ya Rasulullah, we are right behind you, go forth, we'll march with you. So Rasul says, Jazakallahu khairan, and he does the dua for Abu Bakr. He says, okay. So again the Prophet says, what do you think we should do? And so Umar was thinking, maybe Abu Bakr did not say it properly. Let me just put more love into this. And so he gets up and says, Ya Rasulullah, we are completely with you and we are this and we are that. Absolutely, we'll fight if you want us to fight for the sake of Allah. And so Rasul thanks him, does the dua for him, and he sits down. Again, the Prophet says, what do you think we should do? This is for Badr. And so now Miqdad radiallahu anh thinks, maybe they've not gone far enough, so let me do even more eloquent speech. And he does an even more eloquent, beautiful speech. And so after that, the Prophet thanks him and does the dua, and then he sits down. Now all of these three Sahaba, they were from Mecca. They are Muhajir. They're not from the Ansar. Ansar are the supporters. Ansar means supporters. Muhajir means the one who did Hijrah. And so they're all Makki. Saad ibn Muadh is from Medina, from Aus, and he's a Madani. For the fourth time, the Prophet says, what do you think we should do? So Saad ibn Muadh now gets up and says, Ya Rasulullah, perhaps you refer to us as a Madani, Aus, Khazraj, Medina. And the Prophet nods in the affirmative. And then this Saad ibn Muadh, this great Sahabi, gets up and says, Ya Rasulullah, wherever you go, we are behind you. You go march forth, we are behind you. Because you see, the Muhajir are very few. How many Muhajir do we have? Medina, you need Medina support in order to be able to fight in Badr. But Medina did not have to fight. This is a fight between the two Meccans. And so it was completely up to him if he wants to join or not. And he says, Ya Rasulullah, we are with you, completely with you. It's not a Makkah Madani thing anymore, right? It's about Islam now. It's Islam versus Kufr. And then he says, Ya Rasulullah, we are not going to be like the Sahaba of Musa who said, you and your Allah can go and fight and we're going to stay here. Wallahi, if you take us to the depths of the ocean, we're going to go down with you. Why did they say ocean? It's because the Arabs were scared of water, because they live in the desert. In the desert lands, you will have people scared of water. What if I drown? They're scared of swimming. They don't want to take swimming lessons. And so he says, we're going to go to the depths of the ocean, Ya Rasulullah. But please go forth. Don't think that we are going to lag behind. We're going to be just like this. And so the Ansar are the best of people, according to Rasulullah, because look at what they're doing. You see, for the Muhajir, they have to do it. They don't have a choice. For Medina, it was an optional thing and they opted for it. This is that Saad ibn Muadh. So, coming back to the enemies, we have Abu Sufyaan, his forces, who gathers the greatest army, 4,000. It is unthinkable, this number. 4,000. There is a total of maybe about 2,500 Muslims in total in Medina. And you have 4,000 just the Qurayshi Makki. Then he gathers all of the Ajlaf. Now, who are the Ajlaf? They are the Bedouins, the nomadic Bedouins, but the crude Bedouins, the worst kinds of Bedouins. When I say Ajlaf, I'm going to have to say something that you're not going to like it, but you need to know who we are fighting against. The leader of that was Huyay ibn Husn, this man. This man was, I'll give you one story of this guy, then that'll give you an idea of how horrible these people are. So Abu Sufyaan is recruiting the worst of the worst. This man, once he barged into the house, he came for a business trip in Madinah. And so he barged into the house of the Rasulullah, of the house of Aisha. He barged into the house of Aisha. Remember, there were curtains at that time, no doors. So he gets into the house without knocking. He does not knock at the door of the Rasulullah. Aisha, remember, there is no hijab versus revealed yet. So he can see Aisha, our mother. And he comes in and the Prophet says, where are your manners? Where are your manners? Right? You're supposed to knock when you enter. And this man says, I have never knocked the door for any Adnani in my life. So what is Adnani? The Arabs are divided into Qahtan and Adnan. Way back, way before the Rasulullah's time. The Prophet ﷺ himself is an Adnani, which were the Arabs who became Arabs, and the Qahtani are original Arabs, who were always Arabs. The ones who became Arabs became better in speech, in literature, than the original Arabs. So he says, I've never knocked the door off an Adnani in my life. You think I'm going to knock for you? A'udhu billah, this is Huyay. And he looks at our mother, he looks at Aisha and our mother, from this we understand, she was beautiful and the Prophet liked her, and she had red cheeks, pink cheeks. Rasulullah named Aisha Humayra because it means the one with red cheeks. And so she had red cheeks. So this man comes in again, and he already said, I'm not going to knock at the door. I've never knocked the door of an Adnani in my life. And then he says, who's this Humayra? Who's the one with the red cheeks? Who's this one? And the Prophet said, that's my wife. And this was the Jahili practice at that time. He says, I'll give you a better one. Take one of my wives. But you understand what is happening, this kind of conversation. Crude, you can understand, the worst kind. Abu Sufyaan is nothing like this. Abu Sufyaan is an enemy and everything, but he was not ignoble. He was not down, crass, crude. Not like that Uqba ibn Mu'ayt who threw the carcass of the camel on the Rasulullah. These are the worst kinds of people. And so he goes, I'll give you a better one. Wife exchange, And so the Prophet just says, Allah has made this haram. Can you believe the patience? Can you believe if any one of us were asked this question? Despite the Quran that we have, despite all the things that we've learned, For the Rasulullah to reply so calmly, he was talking so nicely that even Aisha Radhiyallahu is looking at this and she's waiting for this man to leave. When this man leaves, Aisha Radhiyallahu says, Ya Rasulullah, who was this man? And the Prophet says, that is the Ahmaq al-Muta, the guy, the fool who's followed. He was a leader, he is followed, but that is the idiot, that is the fool. What a dishonor that you are being called a fool by the Rasulullah. And so Aisha says, but you were talking really nicely to him. You were speaking very nicely to them. And the Prophet says, there are some people in this world that you have to talk to nicely. Of course, I'm paraphrasing. There are some people in this world that you have to talk to nicely just to save yourself from their evil. And we all know in all the country that we are in, if you're in a rowdy place and you have some people who are absolute dirt, they can say, they have no barrier. They can say whatever about your mother, about your sister, about whatever. You have to be quiet. You have to be smiling, fake smiling. The most hated people in the eyes of Allah are these people. That you have to be scared of his reaction, being even what you are worried about, and you have to politely smile, even though he's the worst. They are the most hated in the eyes of Allah. And these people were from them, this man. And just so you know, this man eventually at the Fatih Makkah, he becomes a Muslim for a weekend. As soon as the Prophet passes away, and you know there are false prophets that are going to come up. Eventually, after a couple of months, they're going to say, I'm a prophet because this is good business. I can just say I'm a prophet, I get some revelations. And one of the false prophets was Tulayha. He was claiming that he's getting Field version 2.0, believe it or not. And he made his own concoctions. He actually has his own rhymes. So he declared himself as the prophet, Tulayha. And because he was from the tribe of this Ajlaf guy, he immediately switched alliances. He says, I believe in him as the Rasulullah. And when Abu Bakr Siddiq sent the forces and eventually he was captured and then he was brought over, he said, why did you switch sides? He said, I was never a Muslim to begin with. I mean, I never cared about Islam anyway. So what's the big deal? I choose him, at least he's from my tribe. So he was never a Muslim, so he's not a murtad. You understand? So you cannot execute him. So he was let go by Abu Bakr Siddiq. The ones who were Muslim who refused to pay zakah, they were actually executed. But he was not a Muslim. He said, I was never a Muslim, I don't care. Incidentally, Tulayha, the one who claimed to be a false prophet, eventually he escaped after Abu Sufyaan's battles, the wars of the Ridda, and he went to Syria and he actually became an actually good practicing Muslim in Syria. And he then did istighfar as much as he could. He did dua to Allah, Ya Allah, make me die shaheed, accept my good deeds. But anyway, so this is Tulayha. So now you know, we have Abu Sufyaan, we have the Ghatafan, who are the mercenaries who have nothing to do with anybody. We have these Ajlaf, these bedouins from different parts of near Makkah, Taif and all of these. And you have Banu Nadir, which is in Khaybar, that have been expelled. And we have Banu Qurayzah, which have promised by Allah that we are with you, O Muslims. So Ghatafan is the last one. Who are these Ghatafanis? They are basically a collection of different tribes. Again, they are nomadic, Najdi kind of Arabs, and they have no moral compass. Pay me the right kind of money and I'll fight for you. And so what happened was Abu Sufyaan tried to convince them to come on their side for this confederation, this Ahzab, and they said, we have no problem because they're not dependent on this business. They don't make money from business with the Roman Empire. So if the highways are blocked, it doesn't affect us. So Banu Nadir, Huyay ibn Abdullah, offers Ghatafan half, 50% of the produce of Khaybar of 1 year. Can you imagine how much money the city of Edmonton makes in 1 year? How much money do they make if the city of Edmonton's mayor promises half the revenues of the city of Edmonton? That's a lot of money. And so he says, half the money is yours if you join. What do you think they're going to say? All right, we are in, but they're in just for the money. So they don't have hatred for Islam. They don't have hatred for the Rasulullah. We'll fight. So now these are your enemies. Let's come to the side of the Sahaba. What's happening? Muslims are less than 2,800, 2,700, depending on what book you follow. Out of which you're now going to find they're Munafiq within the Muslims. They're not Muslims, but they're Munafiq. The leader is Abdullah ibn Umair ibn Salul. I just told you about the guy who held on to the Rasulullah, said, you're not going to let Banu Nadir go. Well, these Munafiq are now going to be separated. You're going to see what happens. So let's talk about the Sahaba side now. We now know that they're all coming together. So Ghatafan is coming from the north, Abu Sufyaan is coming from the south, Banu Nadir is coming from Khaybar, Banu Qurayzah is already in Madinah. So Banu Qurayzah lives, think of it like Sherwood Park. We are in Edmonton. Sherwood Park is about 40 minutes by car or 2 hours by camel. So Banu Qurayzah is about 2 hours away by camel. So that place is called Awadi. That's where they are living. Whereas Medina The Masjid of Madinah that we go to today, that is the whole city of Madinah at the time of Rasulullah. Imagine this, all the hadiths that we know of in Bukhari, Muslim, all of those hadiths, all of those incidents. Abu Hurairah is saying this, and Ammar ibn Yasir said this. It happened in the Madinah Masjid. Some point, some place in Madinah Masjid, all of those hadiths. Because that was the whole city. Isn't that amazing? Alhamdulillah. Okay, so let's talk about the Sahaba. We need to know some of the names of the Sahaba for this incident. What is happening from the side of the Rasulullah? These guys have all arrived, are in the process of arriving. You cannot hide this information when 10,000 people are coming in from different parts. Of course, there are many Bedouins on the highways, and eventually the news spreads, and the Prophet ﷺ used to have spotters and people checking up on what's happening, and they found out a massive army is coming. At the highest level of delegation that you can imagine. They've all combined forces and they're coming. And they have all the food supplies. Makkah has Zamzam, Makkah has trade, Makkah is doing trade with Africa, with everybody. They have food supplies. Medina does not have anything. And the Jews were the ones who were doing everything, and they've been expelled. The last ones are Banu Qurayzah. We don't even know what they'll do with us. And they have their own fortresses. If they close the doors of the fortress, you can't get in. That is how the Jews were skilled. They were not skilled in offense. They were skilled in defense. You could not defeat the Jews because you cannot enter their fortress. Not because they can fight, because they can fight. Do you see any similarities in this today? They have defended themselves with the Iron Dome, not with their money, with the money of the Nasara. And they can only defend, and they look so strong, unbeatable, impossible to beat. But they cannot fight one-on-one, hand-to-hand combat. They will immediately surrender. You have Salman al-Farisi, probably the most important name you should know. By the way, Salman al-Farisi is one of the rare Sahabis that both the Sunnis and the Shia love. There are like 4 or 5 Sahabis that the Shia do not cuss. Astaghfirullah, right? Ali radiallahu anhu, obviously. Salman al-Farisi. Abu Dhar al-Ghifari, another great Sahabi. Miqdad radiallahu anhu, and Ammar ibn Yasir, we're going to talk about it here. So these are the Sahabis that the Shia love as well. So Salman al-Farisi is a really old man already at this time. He's older than Rasulullah. He's quite old. In fact, we say in some books that he died at the age of 100 or 105. So that's quite old. So by this time, of course, he cannot physically participate in the battle in the sense that he's going to be running around the swords. But his contribution is going to be strategic. And he's going to give one piece of advice that is going to change the course of this. The reason why most of the people in the subcontinent call this Battle of Ahzab, they call it Battle of Khandaq, is because the idea of a Khandaq came from Salman al-Farisi. And he said, he came from Iran, which is Faris, right? And so he went to Syria first. He became a Christian. He was the son of a Zoroastrian, their equivalent of an imam. His father was like an imam of the Zoroastrians, keeping the fire intact. So you see, in the Zoroastrians, they believe, just like in the Hindus, they have Diwali and all that. You cannot let the fire extinguish. You have to keep the fire running. And so his father was in charge, the caretaker, just like the Ibrahim and Islam's father was in charge of all the idols. He was in charge. And so he escaped from there, learned about Christianity, whatever corrupted version of Christianity there was, but still had remnants of Islam. And then he went to Syria. He became an assistant to a monk, an assistant to the right kind of Christianity that was still not believing that Isa Islam is the son of Allah or something. And then that monk, in their books, just like in Quran, we keep emphasizing he's the last prophet, last Nabi, last Rasul. That's our book. But the older books did not say last prophet, last prophet. They were talking about the next prophet was going to come, obviously, because Torah is not going to say last prophet. And so this emphasis on the last prophet, any non-Muslim will say, why do you keep insisting on the last prophet, right? So in the case of Salman al-Farisi, he's seeing this prophet is about to come, and the prophet is about to come in the land of the date palms. And there are only 2 cities in Arabia of the land that are considered land of date palms, Medina and Khaybar. And Khaybar has bigger, better dates. And everybody, in fact, even the Rasulullah says, he thought he was going to be sent to Khaybar by Allah, eventually before the Hijrah. Because Jibreel showed him that he's going to be moving to a land of date palms. He thought it was Khaybar, but it was Medina. Alhamdulillah. And so Salman al-Farisi also thought it was Khaybar. And so there was a riot going on, the Makkans and Medina and all of these guys do businesses. And so he sat onto a taxi cab. He came down to Khaybar. He was sold as a slave because that was the way of the law there. Nobody cared about anybody, and so they see an outsider with another Iranian face in the Arab land, so they just sold him as a slave. So he worked as a slave. He came to Medina as a slave. In any case, eventually he was told by the monk that there are 3 signs to find out if he really is the prophet. 1, land of date palms. He's in the land of date palms in Medina. The second one is going to be a seal of the Nabi, a seal of the Prophet. It's going to be some physical thing on his body that is going to help you understand that that is the Rasulullah. And it's basically something like a pigeon's egg that is on the back of the Rasulullah. And the third sign is that this Nabi will never accept sadaqah, but he will accept gifts. And so Salman al-Farisi is in the Banu Nadir palms. He sees everybody, he's looking at the Rasulullah following around and everything, and he's inquisitive, and he's still a Christian. And so he brings a basket of grapes or dates or something, and he says, Ya Rasulullah, this is for you. Sadaqah from my side. I'm gifting the sadaqah to you, charity. So the Prophet Muhammad invited all the Sahaba and offered them to eat. And he was sitting with them, and he said, come, take it, have some bite. Salman al-Farisi was sitting and watching all of this. He's like, he did not even take a bite. So he's confirming now this is probably the Rasulullah, because that's coming true. The next day, Salman al-Farisi comes with a basket of dates and says, this is my gift to you. And the Rasulullah says, Bismillah, he eats. Okay, check mark. So, land of date palms, no sadaqah, yes for gifts. The last one is the seal. Salman al-Farisi cannot wait to find the seal, because that'll confirm, done, right? So Salman al-Farisi, who's older than the Rasulullah, is walking around, and you know when we walk with somebody, if I'm walking with Brother Nabil, I'm going to be walking next to him, not behind him, otherwise how is he going to talk to me? But he decides to slow down his steps, so he can come behind the Rasulullah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he's trying to look around his izar or whatever cloth he was wearing, just to see if something slips and I can see something, maybe a mark, maybe something. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam turns, smiles, sees what Salman is trying to do, and raises his cloth up and shows the mark on his body, and then drops it back down. And Salman al-Farisi goes, Ashhadu annaka Muhammad Rasulullah, you have to be the Prophet of Allah. Who else wouldn't have known this, right? And so that is how Salman al-Farisi became a Muslim, alhamdulillah. And he has the honor that up until now, 1400 years later, there is no ikhtilaf. Sunni, Shia, all of us, we love him. Battle of Ahzab is Battle of Khandaq, because he said, Ya Rasulullah, 10,000 forces coming. This is like the Roman versus the Persians. In our country, in Persia, we dig a trench, which was also used in World War I, if you remember. World War I was a war of Khandaq. And so we dig a trench, because if you have, imagine infantry, cavalry, horses, you have camels, you have all of the food supplies, you have bows and arrows, you have all of this coming in, how is Medina gonna fight? You have less than 2,500 Sahaba. Yes, Allah is there, but practically there's way too much in enemy combatants. How are you going to have a one-to-one fight? And so he says, Ya Rasulullah, in our country we used to dig a trench, and the Prophet ﷺ loved this idea, and he said, yes, that's what we're going to do. We're going to dig a trench. And so now you need to picture Medina in your head. The trench was about 2 miles long, 2 miles. Maybe 2 kilometers, so a little less than 2 miles. On one side, you have Harra Gharbiyya and Harra Sharqiyya. So there are the volcanic rocks. Long time ago, there must be volcanoes in Medina, and so when the rocks solidify, it becomes impossible for animals to walk on it, for people to walk on it, because it is so uneven that no 10,000 strong army can walk. So Medina was naturally protected on both sides. Then you have the date palms, dense date palms on this side. So you have Uhud mountains. Nobody's coming through the Uhud mountains, but you can clearly see them whoever comes in, because you can come in maybe 10s or 20s. You cannot come as a 10,000 army. And so Uhud mountains, you're protected. Like in India, they're protected by the Himalayas. That's why no foreign army ever invaded from that side. It's always been on the left-hand side, right, of India. They're protected naturally by the Himalayan mountains. That's why they had a 7,000-year-old civilization. And so Medina has Uhud. Then they have Harra Gharbiyya, Harra Sharqiyya, which is the volcanic rocks. Nobody's crossing there. Then they had the dense date palms. How can you bring horses and camels and everybody through it? The only stretch of land was right in the front between this. So think of it as a U and the opening of the U. That's the part they have to dig a trench. And that is about 2 miles. And so they dug it 2 miles in length. And in the width, it was about 2 of my size. So it's about 10 feet. I'm 6'1", so 6'1" and 6'1" put together. That was about 2 people can lie down on it. In the trench. That's the width of the trench. And the depth of it was about 10 feet. So if the horses go in there, they're going to sink in. The camels, they're not going to be able to get up. right? So there's no way the horses are going to proceed now. They're going to see it's a big ditch. We're not going to be able to go there. That is a sure shot way of stopping all of your technology. You can't do anything. And this was an idea by Salman al-Farisi. By the way, interesting thing about Salman al-Farisi, when he came, you know who are the Muhajir? The ones who came to Medina. And who are the Ansar? The ones who live in Medina. The Sahaba came to Salman al-Farisi and the Prophet had them Muakha. Muakha is basically a brotherhood bond for all the Sahabi. Abu Bakr is going to be with him and Saad ibn Muadh is going to be with him. And so every Madani was paired with the Makki. When Salman al-Farisi came, the Sahaba started fighting over who's going to be with him. And so the Medina Sahabi said, he's an Ansar because he's in Medina, he's from Medina, he was living here. Right? And he was in Medina for a while trying to find out the Prophet is the Prophet. And so they were fighting that he's an Ansar. The Muhajir said, no, he did Hijrah to Medina. And so he is a part of us, he is a Muhajir. The Sahaba were fighting for this. And I remember the first time I heard this, I had tears in my eyes when I heard this. It was just, I did not know the answer. Is he a Muhajir or is he an Ansar? In your minds, think of the answer. You don't have to tell me, but think. What do you think he is? Because he has done Hijrah. He has done Hijrah. But he has been living in Medina. He is a Madri. He knows Medina more than the Muhajirs do because he has been there. And so the Sahaba could not agree and they went to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Said, Ya Rasulullah, Salman al-Farisi is Ansar. And said, Ya Rasulullah, he's a Muhajir because he done Hijrah. You decide, Ya Rasulullah. And the Prophet says, he is Ahlul Bayt. He's not from your side, he's from my family. That is Salman al-Farisi. Now you know why the Shia love Salman al-Farisi, because he's Ahlul Bayt. But that is an honor that is Salman al-Farisi has, and no Arab also has this. And by the way, Salman al-Farisi, when he told the story of how he became Muslim eventually, how he was sold as a slave, how he escaped from his father, and how he became a Christian, the Prophet then called the Sahaba, Muhajir, who have Bilal radiallahu anhu, who's been tortured in Makkah, Umar radiallahu anhu, and all of these Sahaba who have left all of their money and everything, Abdul Rahman, Mi'awdi, Ashraf, Bashar, Sahabi, Zubair radiallahu anhu, we're going to talk about all of them here. The Prophet says, sit, listen to his story, and learn from his story and how he became Muslim. The Prophet is asking the ones who have done all kinds of sacrifices, listen and learn how he became Muslim. As if to say, you got it really easy because the Prophet was sent to Makkah and he became Muslim. Yes, of course, they did what they did and they are who they are. But look at how he became Muslim from where to where. Well, the Prophet is saying this to the Muhajir. Then listen to his story. Anyway, that is Salman al-Farisi. Alright, so now the trench is being dug. We have quite a few stories of the digging of the trench. That's the sad part, interesting part, emotional part. It is something that's going to be impacting you if you're listening to this for the first time. There were no bulldozers, no machines, no excavators, just tools. And so the Prophet said, this is the line that we are going to take. He told the specific line of the Khandaq. And so the Sahaba got to work. All they have is tools. And there's no food. And you know the forces are coming in. And it was winter time. And if you've lived in Saudi Arabia in the winter time, in a desert, have you seen that winters? It is not the winters of Edmonton, where you have parkas and Canada Goose. It is the worst kind of cold that you can imagine. It seeps into through your bones. It seeps into the bones, the cold. So you have the cold, no food, because there were no food supply remaining, because there's a 1 month siege, because Abu Sufyaan's forces have arrived, Ghatafan has arrived, and there's a trench in front of them. I'm skipping the part of the digging of the trench. And so they're just sitting there. How do we get past, right? And so Abu Sufyaan has plenty of food, and he has supplies coming in, and he has Ghatafan and everybody, but how is Medina going to get their food? If you stay for a month, you have the food that you have. So everybody was asked to put the food together, and Rasulullah, everything was happening. So all of that food is slowly disappearing, finished. It is cold, and they are fearing for their life because 10,000 surrounded Medina. All you have is the Khandaq. Now, while they were doing the trench digging, so I'm telling you at the time before the forces arrive, okay, when they're digging the trench, that's the part that I love, one of the favorite parts. They were doing poetry. And I specifically wrote this poetry, even though I don't speak Arabic as a language, I specifically wrote this poetry just to give you an idea of if you were in that scene and so you can feel like you're there. They're digging the trench exactly as per what the Rasulullah said. There was a Sahabi, al-Bara ibn Ahzab, he's an Ansari Sahabi. He said, on the Yawm al-Khandaq, on the day of Khandaq, on the day of digging the trench, I saw the Rasulullah carrying the dust so much that his chest hair was entirely covered in dust. So he himself is doing the digging, just like all the Sahaba. Everybody has ships. And you have very few people, and you have so much to do. Can you imagine 2 miles in Edmonton with all the machinery? And you have only the time that is remaining for Abu Sufyaan to have his forces, 10,000 forces. The 10,000 forces cannot come as quickly as, say, 2 people, right? 2 people can arrive in 3 weeks from Makkah to Medina, but 10,000 will take their time. So you do have like 3.5 weeks for them to arrive, but that's all the time you have to dig. And so everybody has to work in 24-hour shifts, no sleeping. So you have Sahaba who are sleeping while other Sahaba are working, and then you have that, so 8-hour clocks or 12-hour clocks, whatever they were following. And so this particular Sahabi says, his chest was completely covered while we were versifying the dua. It was a dua, it was a shir or shairi in Urdu, it was a poetry, where we as the chorus were doing abayna, 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 abayna. Now the reason I'm saying this is because the Sahaba were continuing what the Prophet was saying. And what the dua was, you see the words in the poetry, I'll give you the English translation first, so then you understand what they were saying while digging the trench. The translation is, "Oh Allah, were it not for you, we would not be guided, nor would we give charity, nor would we pray." You know, you have to give money to the poor, you're only doing this because you're Muslim. Otherwise, my money is my money. You're standing up 5 times a day doing wudu, waking up, just because you're Muslim. Otherwise, you say, why am I going to do this, right? So Alhamdulillah, we are Muslim, and we're doing this. Otherwise, we would not be guided. So Allah, were it not for you, we would not be guided, nor would we be giving charity, nor would we pray. So send your salam, your peace down upon us, and make our feet firm when the enemies come to us. They know the enemies are coming. So Ya Allah, make us firm when the enemies come to us. Verily the enemies have transgressed upon us, and when they want fitna, what is fitna? Shirk. They want you to do Lat and Uzza worship, or murder. They want to kill you because you don't worship. This is all fitna. Verily, the enemies have transgressed upon us, and when they want a fitna, we refuse to listen to them. We refuse, we refuse to listen to them. And so the Sahaba would go, we refuse, we absolutely refuse. That is abayna. So in Arabic, it has lines like mahtadayna, sallayna, alayna, illaqayna, alayna, fitnatan, abayna. So the actual Arabic dua is, Allahumma lawla anta mahtadayna, wa la tasaddaqna, wa la sallayna, فأنزلا سكينة علينا وثبت الأقدام إلا قينا إن العاد أقدبه علينا إذا أرادوا فتنة أبينا. And the Sahaba go أبينا, and across the trench you have this going on. And in this we have a couple of stories that Ammar ibn Yasir, another Sahabi that the Shia love, by the way, Ammar ibn Yasir, just so you know, is the Sahabi who was tortured when he was 6 years old, and his mother is the first Shaheed in Islam, and Yasir, his father, is the next Shaheed in Islam. His mother, Sumayyah, you know what happened in Makkah. If you don't know, the Abu Jahl made her do what he wanted to do, and when she still continued to say Allah is ahadun ahad, one and only, so he tied up the horse on one leg of Sumayyah and tied up another horse on the other leg of Sumayyah. And he asked the horses to go in the opposite direction and tore her body apart in front of Ammar ibn Yasir, 6-year-old boy watching his mother die, and another older brother of Ammar ibn Yasir who also died. And then the father is tortured and put to death, and then his brother is put to death, and Ammar ibn Yasir is dug up until his neck, and then he's asked to say Lat is Akbar, say Uzza is Akbar, and say all of those gods are Akbar, and say this, and say curse words to the Rasulullah. Say it, and he's 6, and he's holding steadfast, and he gives up. What are you going to do? And so he says everything that they ask him to say, all the shirkiyah things, kufriyah things, everything, he says it. What are you going to do? And alhamdulillah for him, that we are listening to this story, we can now say, astaghfirullah, may Allah protect us from ever having to have this, but the times are bad, who knows? And so if you ever are in this situation, may Allah protect us all, it is allowed for us to say that because in our heart we have the love for Allah. What do you say in front of it? Allah knows your heart. Anyway, so he then says all of this, he rushes to the Rasulullah when he's left. Somebody with Abu Jahl had a feeling for him. He said, come on, he's 6-year-old, let him go, don't kill him. I mean, he said everything he wanted to say, let him go. So to let him go, that's how he was alive. And he's going to live until the age of 90. He's 6 right now. He's going to surpass everybody. He's going to live for a really long life. And so he rushes to the Rasulullah and says, Ya Rasulullah, I've done everything you asked me not to say. I've done every single one of those acts. I said this shirkiya, this kufriya, this that, I said this about you. So the Prophet Muhammad says, how does your heart feel? He said, my heart is solid, I'm on iman, of course. Okay, then Allah knows that, inshallah. So from that day onwards, the Prophet always called Ammar ibn Yasir, Ya binta Sumayya, or son of Sumayya. The only one that I know has this honor is Isa alayhi salam. You know, Isa ibn Maryam. Allah refers to Isa as the son of Maryam. The Prophet called Ammar ibn Yasir, Ya binta Sumayya. So for the rest of the seerah, when I say Ammar ibn Yasir, realize the Prophet is not saying Ammar, he's saying binta Sumayya. He honored the mother, the first shaheed in Islam. And so Ammar ibn Yasir was doing that trench digging. And you know, we all have friends like this. You know, the Sahaba are there, best friends are there. And so if I have a friend who listens to me and everything, I'll give him double the work, because I know he will not say no. And so Ammar ibn Yasir was the kind of person who would not say no. And so the Sahaba are doing the digging, and they give the big boulder, and they're doing the trench digging, and so they give him 2 stones instead of 1, and they're carrying 1. So as he was carrying the stone, it's fully covered in dust. He comes to the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. By the way, this hadith that I'm going to tell you is mutawatir. How many of you know what does it mean, mutawatir? Not the linguistic meaning. What does it mean in the terms of hadith context? Nobody? Okay. We have Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim. Yes. So we have Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim. That does not mean just because it is in Sahih Bukhari that means a lot of Sahaba heard it. No. It just means that whoever heard it, whoever narrated it is absolutely crystal clear. We know. For example, Aisha Radhiyallahu anha says something to her nephew, Urwa ibn Zubayr, Abdullah's younger brother. And he says it to Imam Malik. And Imam Malik narrates it to his students, say Imam Shafi, Imam Ahmad Hanbal. And he narrates to his student, Imam Bukhari. And Imam Bukhari compiles it. That is the golden chain of narration in Islam. I mean, there is watertight, this chain. But just because it's in Bukhari does not mean it is lots of people have heard it. It's just maybe there's one Sahabi narrating this. In fact, the first hadith of Bukhari, actions are judged by their intentions, is ahadun hadith, one hadith by one Sahabi. But mutawatir means everybody has heard it in terms of Sahaba. Not somebody coming after the Sahaba. Every Sahaba has heard it. And why wouldn't they not hear it? They're digging the trench, everybody. They're the highest population of Muslims up until now is in Madinah entrenched. And in front of everyone. And they're all dumping work on Ammar ibn Yasir radiallahu anhu. And he says, Ya Rasulullah, look at these guys. They're killing me. He says this. They're killing me with this work. Look at this. And so he's holding on to this. He has all of this dust on his face. The Rasulullah himself has chest hair. We just heard from the other Sahabi. He himself has all the dust. And he must be having sweaty hands at this time. With his own beautiful, blessed hands, he touches Ammar ibn Yasir's face and he wipes the dust off his eyes and says, La ya binta Sumayya. No, O binta Sumayya. The Baghiya group is the one that's going to kill you. The group that is going to rebel against the Muslim ruler eventually. The group that is Baghiya, that is rebelling, that's the group that's going to kill you. Because he said, Ya Rasulullah, they're killing me, these guys. He says, La ya binta Sumayya. The Baghiya group is the one that's going to kill you. Why is this relevant? Because when he's the age of 90, unfortunately this is a little sensitive, Ali radiallahu anhu, when he's the Khalifa, he had a battle with Muawiyah. And so when they went against each other, Ammar ibn Yasir was a staunch supporter of Ali radiallahu anhu, staunch supporter of Ali. And when Ammar ibn Yasir was shaheed, was killed by the opposing side, everybody stopped fighting. Because Ammar ibn Yasir has passed away. And the Prophet said that the Baghiya group is the one that's going to kill Ammar. And so Muawiyah's side said, we are the Baghiya group because we are the one who killed Ammar. That is what led to the finishing of the battle of Safi. But anyway, that is a whole other conversation. The point is that the Prophet predicted the Baghiya group is going to kill you, and the Baghiya group did kill you. In another hadith, the Prophet said that you're going to drink milk. The last thing you're going to do is drink milk before you're shaheed. And on the day of the battle, Ammar ibn Yasir is 90 years old. He cannot even get up on his own. He's asking the people to make him get up. He says, help me get up. I'm going to take my spear. 90-year-old man, I can only imagine Parkinson's by this time. And so they say, why do you want to get up? He says, this is the spear that I used to defend the Rasulullah. And this is the spear that I'm now going to use to defend Ali radiallahu anhu. And he says, give me a glass of milk. I said, why do you want milk? He says, I heard the Rasulullah say that the last thing I'm going to drink before I'm shaheed is drink milk. And that is the day when he's going to be shaheed. Eventually he drinks milk, he goes into the battlefield, but what do you expect from a 90-year-old? He fought what he could fight and then he died as a shaheed. May Allah forgive me for mentioning all of this. Coming back to Battle of Ahzab, that's Ammar ibn Yasir. So Ammar ibn Yasir is the one who is saying, Ya Rasulullah, they're killing me. Look at what they're doing, right? By the way, this happened twice with Ammar ibn Yasir. It also happened when the Prophet had just arrived in Medina, and the first masjid is Quba, and he's building the masjid, and again, they give him a lot of work. And at this time, we have Hamza, we have Umar, everybody's there. And again, he said the same thing. The Prophet says, La, ya bin Sumayya, the Dali who is the one that's going to kill you, not these guys. Okay, then Jabir ibn Abdullah. This is probably the funniest incident. This is one of the favorites for most people. This is all digging the trench time. And so the forces have not arrived yet. And the Prophet is also participating in the digging of the trench. And the boulders are being smashed. Jabir ibn Abdullah is one of the very, very young Sahabi. He's probably the youngest Sahabi. In fact, in some books, they call him the last Sahabi, which is not historically true, but he was that young, you can imagine. Because younger than him is just Mukhadram. Mukhadrams are those who have seen the Rasulullah as a kid, as a baby, but they probably don't even remember, or they remember the facial description of the Rasulullah, but that's it. They've not interacted with the Prophet the way Sahaba have interacted with the Prophet. Those are Mukhadram, like Abdullah ibn Zubayr, who was just born at the Hijrah. Abdullah ibn Zubayr, Zubayr's son. Aisha loved Abdullah ibn Zubayr more than anyone in the world after the Rasulullah. She loved him more than anyone in the world. And most of the hadiths that we have in Bukhari and everything, thanks to Abdullah ibn Zubayr, who was a mahram for Aisha and she narrated everything, and she narrated everything to Urwa, a younger brother, who was a tabi'i, because he was born after the Prophet passed. And so that's why we have these hadiths. Anyway, so Jabir ibn Abdullah is one of those. You know, we do Hajj thanks to Jabir ibn Abdullah's hadith. He's the one who narrated in great detail how you perform Hajj, how we perform Hajj with the Rasulullah. Jabir ibn Abdullah right now is like 19, he's a teenager. At Uhud, when many Muslims have suffered casualties, Jabir ibn Abdullah, that is the incident with Jabir ibn Abdullah, the Prophet does a whole practical joke with him. Jabir ibn Abdullah is going with the Rasulullah along with the rest of the people on the camel. Everybody's going, some people are dozing off and everything, you're driving long drive. So Jabir ibn Abdullah is sad. And so the Prophet slows down his camel. And he's a young boy. Jabir ibn Abdullah says, Ya Rasulullah, I'm in trouble. What happened? My father I have 7 sisters. My father has left so much of debt. I have no money. He has left me nothing. And I have 7 sisters to take care of. So I just got married. So the Prophet says, who did you get married to? And he says, this older lady. And so the Prophet says, why did you not marry somebody your age? You're a teenager. You can play with her. You know, your age, you can play with that girl. Why did you choose somebody older? And he says, it shows you Jabir's brain, it shows his intelligence. He says, Ya Rasulullah, I wanted someone who can actually take care of my young sisters, rather than I bring one more young sister and now I gotta take care of an 8th one. And so the Prophet then does an actual practical joke with them. So Jabir ibn Abdullah was going, and when the Prophet said, Ya Jabir, so what do you have? He says, I have this camel. That's all I have. That's it, this car. They think of it as a really, really old, rickety car, right? Old camel, cannot even run quickly. He's lagging behind, then all the Sahaba. And the Prophet has slowed down the camel to be with him. And so Jabir ibn Abdullah Rasulullah says, Ya Jabir, sell me your camel. Sell me your camel. The one thing he has remaining. And so he says, Ya Rasulullah, I cannot sell you the camel. You can have it. Of course, right? And so he says, I'm not going to sell you the camel, Ya Rasulullah. You can have it, take it, it's yours. La, Ya Jabir, sell me your camel. Don't give it, sell me. He says, no, Ya Rasulullah, I cannot. The Prophet keeps saying this, and he keeps saying no, and the Prophet keeps saying no. So, sell me your camel. No, I'm not going to sell you, Ya Rasulullah. How can I sell it? In any case, eventually the Prophet says, sell me your camel. So he says, okay, Ya Rasulullah, I'll sell it. How much? Now, obviously, he does not want to sell it, but now that he's selling it, he's like, okay, I'll sell it. So, when you think of selling something, you're thinking my car has some value and I'm going to give the market value of that thing. Obviously, you're not going to say take it for $1 because that's same as not selling it. And so he goes, okay, I'll sell it to you. So the Prophet says, how much? How about $2? No joke. Of course, I'm paraphrasing. Astaghfirullah, you understand the Prophet is not going to say $2, but I'm trying to make it easy for you to understand. So he says, how about $2? For a car, for a camel, $2. So he looks up to Rasulullah, he goes, Ya Rasulullah, $2. He goes, okay, $5. Is that good? He goes, Ya Rasulullah, $5? Now he was just saying take it for free, and now he's negotiating for the prices. And so the Prophet says, okay, Jabir, $10. He said, Ya Rasulullah, this is too low a price. Oh my God, I thought he was giving for free. And so then the Prophet keeps going. And the Prophet is doing a practical joke with him. You'll find out what happens. And so he keeps going as they keep going, because he was down and depressed, and now he's doing some business. He feels like now, you see the hikmah of the Rasulullah, he's thinking like a businessman now. He's thinking, okay, I have to think about my wife and my sister and everything, and I'm the only one now. And so he's discussing now about his car, the one thing that he has, like a businessman. So all of this is going to help him eventually. Anyway, so the Prophet, by the way, Imam Shafi'i said, I derived 50 points from this one hadith. How to negotiate in business, how to give charity, how to talk, how to initiate a proposal. So many things I derived from this one hadith. But anyway, so the Rasulullah then eventually they keep going up higher and higher, and they get to a reasonable amount, like say $1,000, which is still not a great price for the car that he had, the camel that he had. He probably should have sold it for $4,000 or $5,000, but okay, 150. Okay, he says, all right, yeah, Rasulullah, with a heavy heart. That was the only thing he had, and that's also gone now. Eventually they get to Medina. The Prophet Muhammad then says, okay, you will receive the payment, you can go and get it from the Medina Masjid. And so Jabir ibn Abdullah takes his camel. By the way, he goes to his uncle and he says, I've sold my camel. He says, to whom? He says, to the Rasulullah. And this is a little sad, but the uncle did not like it. He said, you should not have sold it. I mean, that's the only thing you have. Which is what he said. He said what he said. Anyway, so he went to the masjid and he parked the camel, tied it up at the mosque. And at the mosque, he was supposed to get the payment. Bilal was given the money, the sack bag. So Bilal had posted it there. So he goes there and there's a note there that says, yeah, Jabir, did you really think that we will take your camel for this measly amount? The camel is yours and this money is yours. Take it. The Prophet did not want to give it just directly as charity, because he was saying, oh, Ya Rasulullah, I have this problem and that problem. And so the Prophet said, okay, then take this money. No, Ya Rasulullah, I did not say this so that you give me money, and this is not I'm going to take it. But he did negotiation. Now Jabir cannot come back and say, no, I don't need this money, because you need the money. You were just arguing for half an hour about the price of the car. You definitely need the money. And so the Prophet said, the money is yours, and of course the camel is yours, take it. And so he got it. Anyway, so that is Jabir ibn Abdullah. When he's old, about 100 years or something, he's blind, because at that time everybody used to have cataract. He's blind, and so some of the Tabi'i, they come in, and one of them was the son of Hussein, Ali son, right? Ali ibn Hussein ibn Ali. And he says, are you Ali? Come here, let me touch you, because I can touch you and I can feel I'm touching you. Rasulullah, obviously, the Muhajir, they're all family, right? That's what happens with us when we see somebody. And so he touches him, and then he says, tell us about your time with the Rasulullah. How did you do whatever? And so he describes the Hajj, and that is the hadith of the Hajj, which is why we are doing Hajj this way. That is the hadith. So this Jabir ibn Abdullah, we'll end with this story of them. Jabir ibn Abdullah, in the trench digging, he saw the Rasulullah raising the axe. As he raised his arms, Jabir ibn Abdullah says, I saw the Rasul's stomach, which had a rock tied to it. Now what the Arabs at that time, what they used to do when they were hungry, is they would tie a rock to their stomach and tie it up so that it feels as if they have something in their stomach. Psychologically, it feels like they have some food. The situation is so bad, they have no more food remaining in the Prophet ﷺ. It is cold, they have no machinery, people are coming to kill, assassinate. We don't know what's going to happen in Banu Qurayzah. Everybody is busy digging, and Jabir ibn Abdullah sees the Rasul raising it, and he could see the rock tied. He could not see this situation, so he rushes back to his tent where his wife was there. He says, I just saw something that I cannot bear. I just saw the Rasul. I'm so hungry, I cannot imagine this. What do we have? What food do we have? Anything. And the wife says, we have nothing except for a baby lamb, you know that. And usually nobody's going to sacrifice a lamb because you want it to grow, you want the milk and everything. Many years later, you're going to sacrifice it. He says, we have to. We have some bread. Let's just call the Rasulullah and we're going to sacrifice the lamb. I cannot see this. And so his wife said, okay. And so she Bismillah on the lamb, and she made a feast. And she's cooking and everything. Says, go and invite the Rasulullah. And so Jabir ibn Abdullah goes. Remember, there are many Sahaba at the trenches, like about nighttime. And he comes and he kind of whispers and says, Ya Rasulullah, my wife has prepared some lamb for you and bread. So I would like to invite you to come and eat. And maybe 2 or 3 Sahaba also you can bring, you and along with some people you can come in. And this is a funny incident where the Prophet ﷺ listens to this and he gets up and says, Ya Ahl al-Khandaq, O people of the trench, O people of 2,500 people, Jabir has just invited all of us to a party, to dinner. All of you are invited, let's go. Jabir ibn Abdullah is like, what? Of course he cannot say no. So everybody is now, obviously everybody must be hungry, you can only imagine. So he's thinking, what am I going to do now? My house can only have accommodation enough for 10 people. Like nobody can even sit more than 10. So he's rushing faster than everybody else to get to his wife. And so he comes and says, the Prophet has invited everybody. And the wife is the wife, and so the wife is busy cooking. And she goes, did the Prophet say this or you said that? Who said, who invited them? Because if it is you, because I'm standing right here. But if it's the Prophet, he says, la, this is the Rasulullah who invited this. This is nothing around my problem. Alhamdulillah, in his case, how conveniently he put it on Rasulullah. So his wife said, okay, then the Prophet invited, what can we do? Okay, fine, that's it. And the Prophet then sent a message to Jabir, said, when you get there, make sure that the food is covered for barakah, which is covered, and until I get there, do not open it. He says, okay, Rasulullah. So he advises her. So it's covered. So the Prophet ﷺ arrives and opens it, and then his blessed spit, he puts it into the food for barakah, the dua, and then he says to Jabir, call people in groups of 10 and let them eat. Groups of 10. And so Jabir then called people in groups of 10. What was the size of the pot? This much, right? One lamb. And 10 people ate to their full and they left. Another 10 people came. Again they ate to their full and they left. Another 10 people came. Another 10, until all of Khandaq was full to the brim. And only the Prophet is not eating yet. And Jabir himself is the host, so he's supposed to eat last. And so everybody, in terms of quantity, this is probably the greatest miracle, where literally everybody, again, mutawatir hadith, everybody had heard Ammar ibn Yasir's situation. Jabir ibn Abdullah, this thing happened to everybody. And so it was the grandest feast at the time, and they were having date pit remaining, right? So this barakah came because Jabir ibn Abdullah could not bear to see the Rasulullah hungry, and then Allah blessed everybody. If one person's good deed, Allah might bless the whole city. So we wanted to continue doing our good deeds. So anyway, so that is the barakah of the Rasulullah. So this is the incident of digging the trench. Finally, I'll just end the digging the trench, then we'll get to next week inshallah the guarding of the trench, because now the trench is being dug, now the people have arrived, the enemies, now we have to guard it. What's going to happen now? So we're going to get to that next week. But the last incident of the digging the trench is the Sahaba, one Sahaba, he came across a particular boulder, and this is a famous hadith, he came across a particular boulder that would not crack. So he tried hard, nothing happened. They called Umar is who he is, could not crack. So one Sahabi said, okay, let's just go around it. It's just one rock. We have the trench wide enough. Let's just go around it. But the other Sahabi said, no, we have to go to the Rasulullah, because the Prophet specifically said this is the line of the trench. So again, I don't know who was here 2 days ago when I was talking about Hanafi and Hanbali and how literal you have to be. One Sahabi says, come on, you just have to make a trench. Let's just go around this particular rock. Whereas the other said, no, the Prophet said this line, end of story, this line. So you will always have this tension between Sahabis. And so they went to the Rasulullah, and they're especially careful because just a year ago in Uhud, the Prophet had told the Sahaba, do not leave this mountain, even if you see us, our dead bodies, being eaten by vultures, don't leave. But the Sahaba left, and what happened, right? And so many of them passed. And so this time they're very careful, and they said, no, we have to check with the Rasulullah. So they went to the Rasulullah, and the Prophet himself took the axe and says, give me the axe. And then the Prophet said, which is a famous hadith, Bismillah, Allahu Akbar. And he smashed the boulder, the rock, and it cracked. And then Rasulullah says, Allahu Akbar, I can see the red castles of Syria. Allah has given me the keys to Syria. The red castles, he's describing literally the cover of the castles. And they were red at the time, right? And so I can see the red castles of Syria. So there was a lightning, there was a crack, and he's saying, Allah just showed me the red castles of Syria. Syria is fully Christian right now. All of this war that is happening is because their business with Christians has stopped, Abu Sufyaan. And Allah has just promised, you will get Syria. Then he hits the axe again for the second time and says, Allah, Bismillah, Allahu Akbar, I can see the white pillars of Madinah, Ctesiphon, which is the capital of Iran, which is Persian Empire, which was at that time stronger than the Roman Empire. See, the Roman Empire had a lot of problems going on, but the Sassanid Empire was really strong at the time. So I can see the white pillars that have been gifted to me by Allah. And then, for the third time, he hit and the rock split completely. He says, Allahu Akbar, I've been given the keys to Yemen. Yemen was in the south of Arabia, also Christian, and they were probably the most eloquent civilization. They were Christians, they had all the money, the best fabric, they would just speak very softly. They were the civilization. Look at what has happened in Yemen today, and God bless them all. And so he hit the axe on the rock and he said, Allah, we're having given the keys to Yemen. Wallahi, I can see the doors of Sana'a, the doors of the fortress. And so this happened. And this particular hadith, remember this for next week, because the hypocrites, the Munafiq, will use this hadith. Because what's going to happen now when the enemies arrive, it's going to be a really, really disastrous situation. Allah says in the Quran, this is the situation, the Ahzab, when we, Allah, tested you, Sahaba, the most, where your hearts were in your throat. Because what's going to happen with your families, what's going to happen with Banu Qurayzah, what's going to happen with Ghatafan, all of this is now going to come. Now that you know who's Ghatafan, Abu Sufyaan's forces, Banu Nadir, which is Huyay ibn Abdullah's force, and Banu Qurayzah, which is in Madinah, now you understand what's going to happen. Up until now, we were busy digging the trench. Now we have to guard the trench. And then they come and arrive, and then there's back and forth, and Ajlaf has done something, and Zubair has done something. We'll get to all of that inshallah next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.